Good afternoon. I'm Matt Swallows with Swallows Insurance in Cookeville, Livingston, and Smithville. And I'm going to speak to you guys today to tell you what I think is the most important things you need to look for in your commercial or business insurance policies, and the reason to have certain coverages based off of our years of experience. First, I feel like it's really important that you look for an independent agent. And what that means is they represent more than one company. So they have a lot of companies to choose from when it comes to finding the best coverage and price and protection for you and your business. If it were me starting up a business and I was just moving somewhere else in the country, that's exactly what I do. First thing I look for, independent agency, to find out what companies they have, make sure they have a lot of options for me. Because you may start with one company, and then a few years later that somebody else may come along, another company that's a little more competitive price-wise, or offer a different coverage that is specific to your business. So there's just a lot of options out there. And just remember that the insurance business, I know a lot of the big box insurance companies advertise this on TV, and all they talk about is price, price, price. So it makes everyone think it's a commodity, but it is definitely not a commodity. I mean, every company's forms and coverages are so different. And unfortunately, you don't learn that until you have a claim or a loss. And a lot of times people learn it the hard way. So look for an independent agency that has a lot of options. Secondly, I would look for, it's certain professional designations within the industry. In the insurance agency world, the CIC designation, Certified Insurance Counselor designation, is probably regarded as the most important professional designation to the agency side. So I would look for that. I would make sure they're independent, and I would make sure they have at least a Certified Insurance Counselor on staff, because that is at least 5 years of insurance training. It's the equivalent of having a master's degree in insurance. Just an example of some numbers. There's approximately 35,000 independent insurance agencies across the U.S., and there are about 33,000 certified insurance counselors. So if you kind of run some rough numbers there, that's less than one per agency across the country. So that's what you need to look for. And just a plug for Swallows Insurance, but we have 12 on our staff, and we have about 4 or 5 in the program currently. We feel like it's very important for us to stay up on all the coverages, all the forms, and what all is going on out there, so we can provide coverage for our clients that is what they need. So those are the first two things I do. I look for an independent agency, make sure they have a certified insurance counselor on staff, and then I would go to them and start talking about your business and get advice from them and recommendations from them. So now that we have that aside, I'm going to talk about some of the base coverages that pretty much every business needs, and kind of like what we call the meat and potatoes of commercial insurance. But the first coverage, and I'm not going to go too in depth on what these do, but just to tell you what they are so you know the questions to ask. First is general liability. Every business needs to have general liability coverage. No questions, that's just what you need. That protects your business if you get sued for slander, libel, if you have if they come into your facility and slip and fall on the floor, that covers you. Just remember, you can be sued for anything. And generally speaking, your general liability will step in and protect you and defend you. Now, there may not be coverage for it, but there'll be coverage for the defense. So that's important. And most basic general liability policies are fairly inexpensive unless you get into big, complicated businesses. So that's Insurance 101 commercial. You need your general liability policy. That's important. Second, of course, is if you own property, you need commercial property coverage. That's pretty basic. I think everybody probably knows that one. And then if you have automobiles listed in the business name, it needs to be on a commercial auto policy. We find a lot of people, from their personal lines coverage, their personal home and auto, and their commercial home and auto. That's where the expertise starts to come in on the independent side, and especially the CIC side. There's some coverage gaps. If you have your personal auto and your business name, but you cover it under your personal auto. there are potential coverage gaps, huge coverage gaps there. So just make sure you have things titled correctly and covered correctly when it comes to the commercial auto side. So those are good questions to ask anyone you deal with. And then, if you have employees, it's basic. You need workers' compensation. Now, we have so many clients that say, well, state statute is unless we have 5 employees, we don't have to carry it. Well, no, you don't. But you don't have to do a lot of things, but they make good business sense. So workers' comp is one of the easiest things to get. You need it, even if you have 1 employee. I'm telling you, because it really protects the employer, you as an employer. So basically, if they get hurt, you cannot be sued. If they get hurt on at work, work comp steps in, covers it. It basically covers you from any negligence and liability that may arise. So it's very important. I recommend it to everybody. You need it, even if you have 1 employee. And we have a lot of people that say, well, I'm the owner. My brother or sister, my family works for me. That's it. I don't really need it. Well, that's fine, and I get that. That makes sense. But if they fall, if they're disabled, that's fine. They may not sue you, but they may have a wife and kids at home that they're providing for. So then, what would that situation look like? Work comp would step in and pay that. So, or you're going to be paying it out of your pocket. So it's very important to have. I highly recommend it. And then, other than that, an umbrella policy, which sits on top of all those coverages I just mentioned. So the umbrella policy just gives you another layer of coverage. It sits over your auto, your GL, your property, your work comp. They don't always do that. You need to make sure and ask that they sit over all of that. They can, but you have to ask for that to be done, or a good professional agent should already do that. But the umbrella it's very inexpensive, and it's usually another $1 million worth of coverage on top of everything. So if you get sued for $1.5 million and your limit on GL is just $1 million, well, the umbrella would step in at that point and cover the other $500,000. So this is also an area that can get you in trouble if you start moving your coverage around to different agencies or different agents, because we've had instances before where we insure a commercial account and they find their commercial auto coverage cheaper somewhere else. So they move it there. Well, the reason it was cheaper is because their liability limits on their auto policy was lower. But we had all the other coverages and they didn't let us know. They just said they found it cheaper. So they moved to someone else. We didn't know what their liability limits were. Their umbrella sits on top of everything, and the umbrella requires you to carry certain limits. So the umbrella kicks in after a certain limit is exhausted, and their limits were way, way low. They require you carry on this, in this instance, they require them to carry $1 million underlying limit on their auto. They didn't. They found it cheap, which it was. You get what you pay for. And in this instance, they had, I think, a $250,000 limit where the loss was $2 million. So the umbrella doesn't kick in until after the first $1 million. So you can see if you do some math right there, they end up having to pay out of their pocket $750,000 until that umbrella kicked in. Their auto limit that they got cheap paid the first $250. They had to pay $750 out of pocket, and then their umbrella kicked in on top of that. So those are some gaps people don't think about. Again, just like most things in the world, you get what you pay for. So, insurance is not a commodity. There's not a commodity. There are a lot of different forms and limits that you need to abide by for coverage to kick in. So, those are kind of what you call the meat and potatoes of the commercial, the business side. And then there's some other coverages that you need that most every business needs at some level. But they're just really, they've evolved a lot in the last few years, and they've been around for years, but people have been slow to get on board buying them because, it's just an extra expense. It is, but it is more coverage that you need. And those things are professional liability. The rule of thumb on professional liability is if you charge for services by the hour, then you're considered a professional. So your general liability in a lot of those instances would not cover you. you need specific professional liability limits, a separate professional liability policy. Doctors, dentists, lawyers, insurance agents, we have to have our own professional liability policy. Architects, engineers, if you're a consultant and charged by the hour, there's a good chance you need professional liability. So keep that in mind. The other one is EPLI, Employment Practices Liability. Now, granted, you can be sued for anything. Tennessee is an at-will state. You can hire and fire for not any reason, but I mean, you know, poor performance, you can fire someone. But you can still be sued for it. This kicks in and covers you in those instances. So wrongful termination, hostile work environment. You know, recently with the COVID situation, this EPLI became very important. Just no one really knew how to navigate that situation, and there were some lawsuits that popped up on coming back to work or not coming back to work, those type of things. Well, this kicks in and covers you, the employer. Very important. Also, the Me Too movement. Those two things really brought attention to the EPLI. But it's been there for years, and it's been needed for years. But those were unfortunate instances, of course. But at least it opened up business owners' eyes to the best way to cover them and their family and their livelihood. And the next one, which is everyone has heard about now, is cyber liability. Cyber was one of those things that was easy to get a quote, you know, here's kind of what you're looking at on what it would cost to cover your cyber. But there's so many layers in the cyber that is, not all cyber coverage is equal, I will say. A lot of your companies that will write your general liability, your basic insurance will add on cyber coverage, but you really need a standalone cyber coverage, cyber liability policy to cover you properly, because there's so many things out there. The ransomware is one thing that some cyber policies won't cover at all. What they call social engineering. So when you get an email from a vendor saying, hey, we have changed our address to this, send your checks now to this P.O. box. And that came from someone else, not your true vendor, but you willingly wrote a check and sent it. That's not a covered cause of loss in a normal cyber policy. You have to have an endorsement on there called social engineering before that will ever pay out. And the biggest payouts right now are ransom and the social engineering. So those are very important coverages if you're looking at cyber coverage. And most everyone needs cyber coverage. We're all carrying around cell phones. If you have your email on your cell phone, guess what? You need cyber coverage. You need it, period. I mean, everyone needs it. And especially since the recent Colonial Pipeline hack, which was several months ago, it's now gotten to be very hard to get. Used to, it was like, okay, we'll get you some cyber coverage. Now it's not we'll get you some, it's can you get cyber coverage? They are really tightening down because they've been paying out a lot of dollars on this ransom and the social engineering side. So those are probably the most important coverages to at least alert you on what you need to know and what you need to ask for. But we're, you know, at Swallows Insurance, this is our 65th year in business. We're open to talking to anybody, giving advice. If you have a policy, we'd love to check it out and just do a risk assessment to see if there are any gaps and just advise you. You know, that's what we take pride in. We cover what I tell everybody. We cover people's dreams. You know, I mean, their businesses or their homes, that may be their American dream. And so we cover their livelihoods, their dreams, and we want to make sure we do that properly. So please feel free to call us, 931-526-4025, Swallows Insurance. Like I said, it's our 65th year. We take pride in what we do. We enjoy what we do. We love it. And we love to help you figure out what coverage fits you best. And hey, if we're not the right fit, that's fine, but we will at least discuss it with you and talk to you and tell you what you need, advise you on what you need. And we're open 5 days a week, 8 to 5. We'd love to talk to you and love to see you. I think after this, we're going to take some questions. So look forward to those questions and ask me anything. Thanks.